evening, everyone. Call the goals and objectives meeting to order. Traditionally, how this has gone, I know that the town manager gave us a list of our goals from last year, a couple of months ago now. And goals that we've completed, goals that are still works in progress, et cetera. But traditionally, how this has gone is this has been a pretty open forum in terms of what people would like to see accomplished over the next 12 or so months. So I'm pretty much, I'd like to just open the floor to discussion.
Go ahead.
One thing I've been thinking about over the years, we've got a lot of clay pipe in town, and I've talked to Dave Mishu a little bit, and I think we ought to invest a little money in some testing for inflow and intrusion in the water system, in the sewer system, and try to identify some areas and take on some of that work, and if we can apply for grant funding for it. What I don't want to see is what we ended up having over here, and then we're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that'd be a good use, maybe of some ARPA money to do that testing and then design some of the most pressing areas.
Councilor Rankin.
I'll just go through my list. Waterfront, clearly, I know we're already on top of it, but I want to look at the big picture of that this year, because we've been kicking it down, 3 years now, about if we're gonna have major renovations because of this damage. The brick is beautiful, but not practical, whether it be crushed dust or asphalt, whatever, but I think we need to look at, if we're gonna commit money to this and not piecemeal it, let's do it right and look into grant money for the whole project. I wanna focus on that. Recreation-wise, I have a lot, if we can find the money, but so many of our facilities they're being run down, and I've said this every year, I think, that worse than not having these facilities is having them decrepit. Tennis court is garbage. I want to talk about the baseball field, which I think we're going to address that with the playground committee and what we want to incorporate. We're going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about it.
That was a temporary fix, and I kind of think we've put that into, oh, it's fixed. Well, it's not fixed, and it needs a lot more than just the wall. It needs fencing to make it regulation. It needs to make it, we need to make it nice. We haven't put any money into that field in a long, long time. As well as Ian's playground. That's the top priority this year, because that's probably one of our most utilized things in this town. Tennis, I already mentioned the tennis courts. Ice skating rink, we've talked about that for 4 years, about downscaling it and making what we have nice, not this big. Has it even been open this year? I don't believe so.
It'd be hard to imagine with the weather we've had.
In the building there, I don't believe that building is being used for anything.
It is used. Does the Y uses it when the rink is? We replaced the heat pump in it, and we replaced the roof in this past year because it was not repelling.
Let me go down the road that I think we should look into utilizing it more. If the gym can't be used but 3 hours a day down at the Jewish school, let's look into moving the gym into that building, the fitness center.
Yeah.
I'm using the wrong words here.
I was going to say, we have discussed the idea of the fitness center being
building ain't that
located.
big.
It's as big as a classroom.
Well, no, he's saying move the gym.
Gym.
I'm like, man, that's not.
I'm using the wrong terminology.
I'm like,
The
wow.
fitness center
no
is
art.
what he's discussing.
Yes, I think a lot of people would use the fitness center more and are very disappointed that they can't right now until summertime. Well, they can, but it's gotta be for, what, an hour in the morning or
Thank you, Lou.
after school. In the pickleball courts, we had talked about if we downscale the ice skating rink, we can make the other half pickleball or make the ice skating rink surface a pickleball. Because that that popularity, that's all I hear about. Central Street, I'd like to, I mean, I know that's on the horizon, I just wanna keep it on the horizon of completion and if we're taking it over. Paul's mentioned this many times, Mayor Bissonnette, that I think this year we need to set up a committee for Sue's replacement, whether it be one position,
Wait a
two
minute, you
positions.
missed, I missed the right, Sue's gone.
Sue's being replaced.
Sue's replaced.
Sue's eventual replacement on the schedule that you have already informed us of.
Okay, so I went from pickleball courts to I think I probably missed a.
We thought we were gonna.
Central Street, Central Street
Central
is in there.
I think Paul brought that up
Central Street
the first
is,
meeting he was at.
Yeah.
Central Street is this spring, so.
Yeah.
I just want us to keep that on the horizon, that it's gonna be a completion.
I
And the
don't-
committee should also look at one position, two positions.
Or just the whole makeup of the
Yes.
staff.
Yeah,
you know, with-
structure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
business continuity / redundancy.
Right.
It's nice to, whenever we can, we have, especially in Sue, to pick on Sue yet again, we have an opportunity, we have a runway towards, she's given us a timeline.
Yeah.
Well, it's great, let's take advantage of that.
Yes.
Because we found, and it wasn't that long ago, that we replaced several town managers in rather short notice. Since we're not doing that here, it'd be great to take advantage of that runway and make sure that we're doing it, making the best decision.
I was part of that before, and when I remember us temp loaning her first, but then we finally got her to come, she filled two with one,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
I think you're right on the money. I don't know personally, in working with her, you know, the years I did when she first got here, and still, you're not gonna find that.
Right.
You could start now, and you're still not gonna find that.
Yeah.
So I think you're right on the money with two. You're gonna have to do a finance.
Yeah, look at
Yeah.
the whole
What do you
structure of
think
the.
about that?
You're gonna have to look at the structure.
There, in order to provide, planning beyond me in areas that might not be resident in the town manager. I'm working with staff that, I believe we could put into a finance position and hire at the bottom, and what that gives you is somebody who's familiar with your organization, understands what your money is, where it is, how your budgets work, all that kind of stuff, so that you don't have two brand new people to an organization occupying positions that are pretty key to understanding the.
Your two main positions.
And do you feel
Right.
confident with
Yeah,
that?
no, they're.
Like,
I
that-
do.
Great, that's,
And I-
we did that and it was really helpful, because there are some
Yeah.
things you just can't get beyond the years of service already to the town.
Right.
And I think that's the point the mayor has, is we've still got your knowledge while you're here.
Utilize it.
Well, the goal is that when I leave, what I really want is whoever takes this chair, the manager's chair, has a foundation and everybody's on a page that the town just does 1,000% better than it's done when I've been here. You know, that's just set to go forward. Nobody has to dig hole, backfill stuff that might not have happened over time, that we can just move forward. And as I said, part of that, I think, is we have some really awesome people that work for this community who have great skill sets that I think that we could restructure in some ways. I mean, Rich does an amazing job with the waterfront, but Rich's talents are in economic and community development, and his value to the town in a big way is making sure that can, but he needs help in that area, and in order to get help in that area, he needs less he needs not to be the one filling at the marina if somebody's not there. You know, these are things that are all part of this transition.
Restructure.
It's a structuring thing, and we've done what we've done since 2014 to accommodate the fact that we lost the mill. And to sort of hold a turn, as they say, to try and get things built up to a point where, but we've done that successfully enough that there are some people that are pretty overtaxed in this environment, and the last thing you want to do is lose them. But if there's an opportunity as we move forward in this transition to sort of redistribute some things and then hire what you're missing, I think you end up with the institutional knowledge, which is very important on things like finance and economic development and all those kind of things, and you replace the stuff that is the more trainable, easy to fit in, along with whatever you decide you want from manager in terms of characteristics and management style and, you know.
So you're
all that
staying?
sort
Yeah.
of- No.
I swear.
That's what we want.
Well, yeah, I thought I just heard
No,
that.
I'm just saying that your discussion, I'm not gonna participate in that, because your discussion
no.
of what you need,
Yeah.
it's not gonna hurt my feelings if you say, you know what, Susan did okay, but we really, where we are right now isn't the same place. We needed somebody in 2015 who could fill the holes, you know, put the wheels on the bus, find a road, you know, can we do a budget? Can we have a budget? Do we have to lay off everybody that works for the town? That was my entrance. We're not there anymore. And
No.
so the skill set that you need in just this position isn't necessarily that I'm good at that stuff, but I'm not a visionary. I'm not, that's not what I do. I carry things out, but I'm not think of the glass walkway across the river in any way, shape, or form. Maybe you need somebody who's more of a visionary. Maybe you need somebody who's does something, you know, is more focused on things. I spend a lot of time on the finance side of things because it's necessary in an organization like this. And so maybe somebody else is out more in the public, helping Rich more, you know, being more of an asset that way. But those are all things you will decide as you talk about what it is, number one, where you want to go, and number two, what kind of person you think can get you there in this position. And as I said, I don't have any ego in it. I really, really want whoever's next to be 10 times as good as I've ever been, because that's what Bucksport needs. And I've done the best I could while I'm here, but I wouldn't want to think that just because I left that things ground to a halt, that would mean I did a terrible job here. That would mean that nothing was ready to move forward. And Tracy just did this, you know, she spent umpteen years at home building this, and now it's moving forward. It's not gonna miss a beat, and it's not because she wasn't really good, it's because she created an organization that is sustainable beyond the person sitting in this chair, and that's been the goal here and still is. So whatever, seriously, some said, I wish that, you know, I really think we should find someone that does this. I think that's healthy, and I think that's good, and that's why I won't participate in anything to do with your search, or anything to do with,
You don't want to be the
All I-
committee chair?
no, well, but what I will provide you with is a list of everything I do,
That would be great.
Yeah.
and what I think ought to be parceled off.
It'd be good to hear from town staff too, what they want and need in a leader.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially with the restructuring, to get their input of if we
Right.
did this.
Yeah, I like the idea of, I know this isn't the committee meeting, but I like the idea of sort of training in-house components of finance, because in the end, it does save the town money if we can, you've got sort of the manager's salary and the finance salary, which is easily gonna be over $100,000 for that separate position. I mean, maybe I'm naive, that's in sort of
Big
high end.
Yeah.
But I still think it could save on two things, institutional knowledge as well as budget line.
So,
Well, in all actuality, you always wanna, you know, from a organizational standpoint, you always wanna hire from within. My eyes, I mean, I've worked in municipality all my adult life. And it's great when you can hire from within.
If you
That's
can,
cool.
right,
Yeah.
if you
Right,
have
that's,
it
that,
at the
if,
deck.
if you have it,
Yeah,
right?
I got
And
lucky, we had it
If
on
you're-
deck
Sure.
and,
If
yeah.
you're,
Not saying everything, but
well, no, if you're
Different things.
unhappy with your direction or with how you feel your organization is being managed, or you,
Yep.
then you don't want that person training anybody to do anything.
Right,
Want them to
right,
go
right.
so you can hire someone who fits your ethic more. And the town went through that
Mm.
twice
it's brutal.
in short order, not because anyone was bad, just because it wasn't a good fit. It wasn't a good fit.
Exactly.
And so the good fit sounds like a ridiculous characteristic or criteria, but
so this might be too early for this question, but do you have a hard stop date? Do you have a time that you're like, all right, I'm done here and I'm not doing anything else after? Or is it something that, all right, I'm done here and I'll consult here? You know,
I would-
and you don't have to give me that now.
well,
but-
no. But the discussion was that after 12/31, I wouldn't be available.
Yep.
12/31/2025.
Six.
That I wouldn't.
Six.
We would have
I
would have
tried it- I tried it
exhausted
again,
the
you know.
Susan
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
by that date.
And
Okay.
I know you don't wanna be involved, but would it make sense to have somebody on board a few months before you leave? Or,
I was thinking about something like, you know, we hire the town manager, and if Sue can consult with the financial part while we then figure out the fit for that, and do it in like step patterns so that it's not just Sue's gone.
He didn't say I didn't have recommendations for the
Yeah.
restructuring. As to
Perfect.
what the staff that I think you
That makes sense.
would have.
You know a lot more than
characteristics.
we do
Absolutely. I do.
people's strengths and
Only because
weaknesses.
they work for me.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, to put our minds at ease of this process, I'm assuming from the undertone that you're giving, the staff that you have now will be involved in this year's budget process. a little more.
Absolutely.
So that's a great step in that direction.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
Well, if you looked at the manager's report, I talked about who was working with me to input budget stuff, but, I'm not saying we don't have any candidate that may be interested in the manager's position, depending on where we go, because we have people that have that skill set too.
yep.
that's nice to hear. That's a relief to hear.
Well, it is, you know, at certain points I might have to break their arm to make them think that it was a great idea, because the view of this job
I can
isn't,
give you a few tips.
from the inside isn't always, you know, people say, yeah, there's not enough money in the world to do that job, simply because somebody's mad at you all the time. Yeah, pretty much.
Well, speaking of the money, and I would like to go on record as it was Councilor Rankin that brought that up tonight. But this is a great conversation because really, in effect, the town manager is our only employee. And this is one of our major responsibilities. And I think one thing that we need to keep in mind as we move forward, when I mentioned runway a little bit ago, is the budget implications of all of these decisions. Hypothetically, if we hire somebody 3 months early,
Right.
there's a budget implication. So it gives us time to, A, prepare for that. We have a couple of budget cycles to prepare for that, as well as talk that through with people and say there's a reason why, because, you know, there will be people who naturally just say, why in the world are we paying 2 town manager salaries right now? If we're behind that, great, we can talk that through with people. If we're not, you know, depending on who the candidate is, et cetera. So again, I just fall back to that position of this is a really good opportunity to make sure not only we hire the right person, I'm confident we'll do that, but also make sure that along the way, the steps that we take up until 12/31/2025, that we're doing things as effectively as possible.
Now, you had brought up a committee, I was part of that, process before. Not the first one, but her. And that was the entire council, was the committee.
I kinda think it should be.
Yeah. And it was brutal.
It was what?
It was brutal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the second part of it, it was brutal. Now hiring her was the easy part, but, well, not really, because I think there was convincing, because she didn't work for us, right?
Right.
Initially,
No, I was
consultant,
yeah, I
or
was an independent
hired gun.
consultant to
She was a hired gun.
Peabody. Well, they retired from Hamden, and my retirement plan was to do this, and Aidan Peabody called before I was even out the door, and Hamden said, would you do that for us? We'll find you clients, we'll take care of
You
getting
thought
paid,
you were out and they
no.
pulled you back in.
And no, that was, and this short-term kind of go in and fix things, that has great appeal for me. You know, I've been offered by auditing firms to, and when you retire, if you decide you want, I can keep you as busy as you want, just come in and get people ready to get audited and do. And so I took this short-term 10-month gig to do a budget and get things 9 years later. But-
Is there a process already in place, or
Is there what?
a process for succession planning in place, or, because I think if we set up a committee, it would be helpful to sort of set some benchmark guidelines, where, like, by this time, we want to at least have, when we're going to put it out to applications, or how it's gonna go. Especially if we are looking in-house for transparency, it'd be good to have.
I would like to get through the budget season and then jump on this committee, and the first meeting would be just, I think, just exactly what you said, is
Right.
set out timelines.
Are we thinking along the lines of the council has a public session where we're all sitting here talking this through and
I
would certainly want to allow community input and.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think all council, I mean,
Yep.
it's not a mandatory thing, of course, but I think
People, yeah,
we should try to all get together for this type of decision.
okay.
And it wouldn't need to be every week or every month.
Oh,
but-
absolutely,
Right.
yeah, yep, yep. Like I said, that's the advantage of having a little bit of runway here that we're not, but let's take advantage of it.
But back to where I started,
Yep.
I was right at the pickleball.
We gotta go like
15.
Let's get back to Bristol Sue.
Yeah, well, after budget season, I wanna jump on that. And my last thing is this year, I really wanna, if we can, I know Sue's tried the past few years, but is to try to reclaim that railroad, if they'll sell it back.
Yeah.
Cause that'll open up that whole end of the waterfront.
Who owns it now?
I think it's CDX in,
Or if they didn't sell it, they might have sold it.
CSX
C-
owns it, and, yeah.
they're gonna sell?
I would like them to deed it to us, there's no
Right.
value to that.
Right.
They're not gonna
We've
use it.
We've been working together, but it's slow.
But CSX seems like the type of, they're a huge company.
They are.
They'll probably hold on to it, cause this, I know an issue has been, it's been turned over, sold a couple times in the past
They went
6
from Pan Am to CSX at the start of our conversation. They then had 2 big derailments, which kind of derailed our
This is-
conversation.
I'm not gonna play with this, because it's,
Oh, that's what
I'll teach Luke's computer to fly here in a minute.
could be fun.
But I'd like to pursue that the best we can this year. That would be really nice to have different avenues we can use that for.
Yeah, that goes right to the old mill site, right?
Yep.
To the
Well, it'd
dock.
probably be at least to, Sprague Dock, or Irving Dock.
Urban Dock, yeah,
To that road coming down, I don't know that.
okay.
So to make sure that I got this right, Council Rankin, you had the inflow and intrusion evaluate sewer system. You had waterfront, and then under recreation, tennis courts, playground, baseball fields, skating rink, the skating rink building, and fitness center, pickleball courts.
These kind
Central
of,
Street.
those kind of all
Yep,
intertwined together.
I've
but-
got those together, and then Central Street, the railroad acquisition, and replacing me.
And one more that I bypassed is, I'm sure Sherry will give us an update, but want to see how that program worked for her on the,
Habitat for Humanity.
right, and look into incorporating that into the
yeah.
budget.
Yep.
'Cause last year we did not incorporate it, we just gave the money for the 1 year.
We took it out of our program.
I would like
Do-
to add,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just, I think, do we have just 1 year now to spend ARPA?
By the end of this year, it
So
has to be
spend,
identified.
spend ARPA money and identify what to spend it
I
on,
think
so
we
we
have
don't
longer
have
to
to give
spend
it back.
We're-
We have to
longer
commit
spend
it,
but identify
yeah.
26, but it has to be obligated through,
Yeah.
by the end of 24.
Well, I think the few things we just listed is,
I think it's
it's
gone.
gonna chew that up real fast.
Yeah, yeah.
I got a question, and I went to a community last weekend and watched you brought up recreation. Have we, I vaguely remember talking about it before. Is there a reason why we didn't bring, I'll say the why, because they do everything recreation here for us, for our kids. Is there a reason why we didn't bring one here? Or, I went down to the one, and I understand that, but,
The
I mean,
discussion of that was that the housing for that, if it had been here, was thought to be the old fitness
okay.
where the Methodist Church purchased that from that as an existing entity because the cost of construction, our relationship with Denny's Family Y allows us the brand and those kind of things, but building a facility, whether you call it a community center or a recreation center or whatever, is
It's a lot of money.
is in the millions,
Mhm.
and that's, hasn't been identified as something. And the other thing is, there's one in Blue Hill, and there's one in Ellsworth, and there's one in Bangor, there's one in Belfast, that, depending on what you're planning on locating there, when we were looking at redoing the swimming pool, everyone was like, put a pool, and I'm thinking, we can't afford
Right.
there would not be enough
Users.
users to ever make that.
Only reason I brought it up is I went there and I had citizens of the town asking me why we didn't have one. So I wanted to bring it up. Beautiful facility, but and I'm like, I don't know, I'll find it. But yeah, it was.
And is it still, maybe something else to just kind of look at, is it still our best option to go with the Y and not employ our own recreation director?
If we want to make sure that programs always run, and if somebody, nothing gets canceled, no orders around, and then we need to stay doing what we're doing, because one person isn't a recreation department, unless they want to do what Tim did, which is devote 100 hours a week and all that stuff, and that's not reasonable, number one, and, no, I think that when we looked at doing this, for a number of reasons, one is cost. It's less expensive for us to do it this way, and it provides us with more options than we had previously. And number two, it provides consistency, meaning somebody's gotta show up and do something, and it takes all the staffing of the pool and all that off the town's plate. The town doesn't have to chase lifeguards, the town doesn't have to, all of that is handled by others. It takes it off our workers' comp, it takes it off insurances. and it's a brand. And when we were talking about marketing the community and that there are, it's a known quantity, a Y has the same, this is how we operate in every Y everywhere, and that helped with branding. I think that looking to alter that, to provide as much as you want from recreation and still run the pool in the summer and have lifeguards and do all that, it would take more than 2 full-time. It would take 2 plus somebody else. There used to be a lot more volunteers that did things. There are many that still do, but once upon a time, I think there was and that's true not just in recreation, that's true in everything, that the number of volunteers has dropped considerably. But recreation is a subject in which, you know, the percent of people happy is never 100%. Whether you have the department or you have the Y, that because primarily it involves children, and the toughest thing to deal with is parents and their expectations for what happens with kids. And the year that Nick Tomasco was here, and I mean nobody's more connected to Bucksport than Nick Tomasco, and he took it on the chin because they didn't have tackle football. We heard it here at the council, and I certainly heard it in that was a decision that was made for that time period. It's changed since, but it was pretty brutal during
The only reason I'm really pushing recreation this year is because I know there's so many issues that we have in front of us, and none of them are less important, but recreation in school and kids is gonna be my top priority, because if we don't give them things to do and give them a future, we're done anyway, so.
I don't disagree with you. I think that the Y hasn't been tasked with the maintenance of our facilities. That would be a completely different contract, and I don't know that they're staffed to do that. If we were looking at what it would take to maintain our facilities once we got them up to wherever, that's a staffing issue. That's not necessarily,
Well,
it isn't one more thing we can give Rich. It's
I think the fixing up and maintaining needs to stay on our radar every year a
Absolutely.
lot more than it
Yep.
has. That would be a negotiation with the Y of, okay, we have these extra things now that have been in the works or defunct for several years, but now we want them. We have them, we want to use them.
That's a big piece that was on my list for my goals. Talking to Rich, was it last year or the year before? I just happened to call him and he was running around getting prices for roofs on different buildings. And I just remember thinking, you have so many things to do and you're getting pricing on shingles for different buildings, and in the restructure of things, is it possible to add a position, or not a position, a set of responsibilities for our building maintenance that might fall under could it fall under the highway department, under our highway foreman, or under that structure to take care of our buildings and parking lots and some of the things that are getting overlooked and falling behind? Would it be possible to add that to that?
Yeah, on those buildings that nobody is like dedicated to that building, because like public safety, Sean always comes in with a lift.
Correct.
Town garage, Jay and Matt will come in with a list.
Right.
But a lot of these buildings don't have somebody there.
No, when something goes wrong, it falls under Rich.
Right.
And that's not gonna, I don't think that's working well.
Right.
I agree.
You're working well.
Yeah. It's just not sustainable. It's not sustainable, really.
No,
No.
The idea that, and we call it waterfront, but it's not just waterfront. Waterfront also does Main Street and
Mhm.
all the maintenance of all the stuff that goes along with that, and includes Christmas decorations, and it includes, you know, if there were, was someone assigned with those responsibilities for these other buildings and that activity, with some seasonal people, and then maybe one other person, we have a lot of stuff.
Could that fall under the highway department is a big question for me.
It could fall into the highway department, but a lot of what that person does would happen out of this building.
Okay.
I mean, we suck highway away from highway a lot of the time to do
Correct.
stuff here.
Right, right, we call it Public Works is a better
Yes, it
title for
really
that
is.
scenario, but.
But it could be under that, that could be under that, or it could be,
Hiring a few more high school, college students during the summer, spring and summer to maintain. I mean, maintaining a lot of these places, basically picking up trash, sweeping, making sure it's nice and neat.
mhm.
Cemetery maintenance.
Cemetery maintenance, yeah. Are you volunteering? Is that
I mean,
what
that could all
I'm?
be part of the restructuring
Absolutely.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Look at the
absolutely.
deficiencies and what we need to do.
And I'm done.
Excellent. You gave me a great intro, thank you. And the only other thing I had is that I feel like there's all these things that we are constantly presented with that we are cleaning up or getting presented with again, or things like the Historical Society that have been, so the way that we attacked this waterfront use or publicly owned land use policy, I feel is a great example and encouraging for the way that we're doing things, to take that as a good example of the way that we attack and handle the things that are presented to us.
Yeah, continue it.
Right, continue that so we don't have major delays in these things that are left lingering for long periods of time.
And those are really requests by outside entities for the town to do something.
Mhm.
Right. And if we don't, then I think we should just say, no, we're not doing anything.
Well,
Yeah, a definitive answer would go a long ways with, I think, a lot of
or
these
some
things.
discussion about to what level the town, if this, certainly everyone in this council has at one point or another discussed the value of the town's history, and that, how important that is, and that maintaining those historical artifacts is really important, which is a different discussion than we need to have a building on Main Street that is open 100 hours a year.
I agree with you 100%.
And so what would move that discussion along when we get to it is, to what degree does the council want the town's financial resources to be utilized for the preservation of its history? And if it's dedicated to, they need to be someplace where it's warm, dry, not moldy, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't limit it to Main Street.
Yeah. I just
But
use.
that ball gets bounced back and forth, and so we haven't made any.
Well, maybe
But
we really
maybe
need
we're-
to then.
I'm suggesting that maybe we're looking at symptoms and not the disease, which is, what are you trying to accomplish? You're trying to preserve the history of the community, right?
Yeah,
What
what's
is
the
the-
vision of the organization?
Well, they are, but they're really trying to preserve their spot on Main Street.
Well,
I mean,
that's a different discussion.
just,
I just use that as an example
Sure.
of
Yeah.
of a reoccurring subject, and this waterfront scenario was potentially, and to some degree, a reoccurring subject that now we have moved forward with.
Mm.
So I just encourage all of us to just keep doing what we're doing as a goal, to keep that thought process in mind, moving forward to handle these scenarios.
one other thing I'd like to see is us approach MMA and get them to come talk to us and see if there's any way we can help them see that school flourish, because it should have a greater impact on Main Street if it was up to speed.
It's got so much potential.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a steady flow coming through here, and that's what I envisioned when they came to us and we changed the zoning for it, was that it would have a good impact on Main Street, but I don't feel like we've seen that yet.
Speaking of that end of town, it would be good if we could see what our rights are with AIM and that mess.
Bubble landfill.
What mess?
Yeah, the
What are you looking stuff up?
Actually,
I love
it's, to be technical, it's Bucksport Mill LLC.
Yep.
AIM,
Okay.
that's the LLC.
Got it.
And they've contacted Alamoosic Lake Association
Mm.
to see if they're interested in the dams. Alamoosic Lake Association has no money, it has no staffing, it has no expertise in dam anything. And I know that they've also approached Maine Water, they've approached Bucksport Generation, which is owned by JERA, and they have not approached us. We might not be on the Christmas card list, but my concern was elevated when the Alamoosic group asked me to meet with them, because it occurred to me that if we were offering these high-risk dams, and every one of them is a high-risk dam because of their location.
What makes them high risk, like 12 water source?
If they fail, they will wipe out things.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Mhm.
Just clear
Just to
enough.
be clear, that's what high risk means, in a sense that,
Picture Tannery Stream like times 100 coming
Yeah.
down.
Right.
Right.
so
Mm.
if they're offering it to an entity that
Doesn't have experience.
has nothing.
No reason.
Because I met with them and they said, you know, what would you, I said, $1, no, I would be asking for at least $500,000 if you were thinking of taking any, I would want $500,000 to come with it so that you could maintain it, you could do those kind of
What does
things.
$500,000 do?
Well, I'm not
One of those dam projects is gonna be,
the one that Orland is applying for to the Ultrachem stuff is $3 million and something.
that's just repair, not
Yes.
replace, not full replacement.
No, but what I'm saying is that my concern is that it's gone down, they've gone from the bigger places to the smaller places. But I contacted the attorney for JERA, for Bucksport Generation, that's owned by JERA, to find out where they were this. They utilize water from there, and they have a right through there to do that. And they are willing to be part of an entity that might look at the Silver Lake Dam overall. They don't wanna be the only game in town, but if the water district, which has vested rights to the water there, and the town and JERA and whoever else, it might be worth a discussion to see what a coalition could do to sort of, in the event that Bucksport Mill declared bankruptcy and things went into, you know, a not great place, the landfill has bonds on it. The dam doesn't. And so if we at least had a conversation with some of these major players about this, I think it would be in our best interest. And as I said, JERA has indicated that they would be open to that, and were fine with me telling the council tonight that they're open to that, because they don't want this to end up being a bankruptcy situation either. And I'm not, there's nothing that tells me, I'm not saying that anyone said they are or they aren't, it's just, if you look at who it's being shopped to, that seems, the Alamoosic Lake Association seems to be a little low on the,
Seems like they're just
It's
trying
sort
to.
of like, get rid of my assets now, so.
so anyway, that's a,
Hmm.
I think that needs to be on your goals and objectives to look at, because those are things that could have a pretty negative impact on the community if that occurred.
One other thing, I think you brought it up a little bit, Steve, but there's parking lots that need maintenance, and I think as part of that conversation, we should continue to try to pursue easements for these agreements, because it is really hard to plan a town if you don't have solid parking.
Does that tie into the PPI stuff that's coming up on?
No, we have several around town parking lots that we don't own or actually have an easement. We just have an agreement which
I
can be
see.
revoked by either side.
Mhm.
And those can be challenging if they were to go away, you'd have a real change in the landscape.
Got it.
I think we're just better off to try to secure them in full easements for planning purposes for the town.
I think you mentioned that a couple of years ago, and we just
About every-
let it go.
But if we're doing maintenance, it's a good opportunity to say, hey, we're
Yep.
committed to seal cracks, and we'd like to talk about, making these full easements. And some of them may not agree, but we gotta keep having the conversation. Other things about, we do need to hold some informational meetings for the VPI process to try to, and that's gonna be tough during budget season, but it'd probably be easier to lay it out.
Those haven't been scheduled yet?
I don't know, do we have firm?
We don't have firm dates yet. We've had a meeting with MDOT and Caitlin, who's the lead for that. We got together. Representatives from the village, Emily, Nancy Minot, are putting together the dates. I believe they'll be coming forward. I believe we said March, April, and May, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Those will be happening. Those will be going out to the public.
Oh, good, okay.
And they're gonna be run sort of like the Heart and Soul community gatherings that happen.
Oh, good. That's great. Okay.
Would it be reasonable to expect perhaps that we could have some sort of update on that at our next regular meeting? If it isn't reasonable, if, suggest a counter, and I'm not putting that on you, I'm just saying that whoever, they could suggest a counter offer. I don't mean it that way, but a date that perhaps might be better, but I don't want it to turn into a layaway plan either. Yep.
Other things like Steve said that we need to get done, the animal shelter, moving that process somewhere.
We've heard that
Yeah.
the problem is non-existent now,
For parking?
I've heard that as well.
that,
Oh, if we brought it to behind the town garage, it's not a,
it is, the operation of it under the current animal shelter, our current animal shelter person, is that they've had virtually no problems.
Well, then we should try to get her some running water then.
That's,
Yeah, that doesn't, to me, that doesn't stop
No,
any
no,
issue. We need
Yeah.
a building, we
Yeah.
need,
I think that,
Where is
at the
it?
very least, we need to look at
Still?
what it would,
Okay.
if you were gonna leave it there, what it would take to give it what it needs to have in that location.
and to
Um,
continue what is over certainly the last 6 months that I can speak
Is that on a well
to.
or public water?
That is,
there's no public water out there.
No.
No
There is a
public-
well, but
It's
you
on a
can't
well.
use it.
yeah.
You can't use it?
We have
Oh,
to,
'cause, yeah.
we use,
Could we put a big tank out there?
I mean, we talked about this last year, but it'd be nice to have a place where the animals can actually get out.
yes.
Right, yeah.
I don't think we're ever gonna get that in that location.
Yep, so we should talk about it, you're right.
there hasn't been a huge appetite from people who come to see me to spend like the kind of $650 a square foot that it would cost to build a new facility.
That's
Right.
right.
I had talked to Luke, can I throw you under the bus for a minute? He had pursued smaller, more prioritized options to some degree, correct?
Yes.
Is it possible, we got the big picture painted to us a while ago that was just unreasonable and unfathomable. Is it possible to establish a timeline for you to give us that smaller window of what might be more affordable and?
Oh, I have it. I mean, you're looking at with contingency, 700,000, which is high, I know, but it's way better than the low bid before of 1.2. But
For an animal shelter?
I didn't want to bring that to the council, because it's still a huge number. I wanted to do some fundraising and that kind of thing, and then if we couldn't meet the whole goal, then come to the council and say, hey, this is where we're at. Can we find the extra 150 or whatever? And there was a lot of people that said they were gonna contribute and help, grant writing and fundraising and that kind of thing, and I said, okay, that's great, call me at my office and we'll set it up, and none of them even followed through. So,
What if we push through a campaign like that for fundraising and something for like a 6-month period to see what it gleaned, and then we could establish a budget parameter of what we'd be willing to spend on it? Is that possible?
Well, do you wanna have a concept of the location before we solicited?
this was, I drew up the drawings based on what Winchester and Allison had said they need. And I
At what,
compressed.
at what location? Or does it matter?
It doesn't matter, the building is the building, but I had anticipated it going in down behind Public Works. Oz was not real keen on that, because even though it would probably be better as far as barking, it wouldn't be completely go away. But now that it's practically completely gone away in this spot, this would be even further away and have a tree buffer. And it gives us options if we ever wanted to have a dog park out there, or if they wanna walk the dogs on the Silver Lake trails, or have a bigger fenced-in area where they can run around, while they're cleaning the cages, that kind of thing. It makes sense over there.
I know
And
that.
Mike might be more on board now that the barking issue has somewhat resolved itself. Plus, I think we can do things to mitigate barking, orientation of the pens, double fencing with
Sound insulation.
stuff covering it so they aren't seeing deer and turkeys and stuff walking by. They won't know they're out there.
I know that, Mike Haas' current development is full.
He's looking at a phase 2.
He's looking at a phase 2, and where you're talking about is where that phase 2 is.
It's somewhat near it, but it's not.
Because when he asked me about, I had indicated that we had kind of dropped the idea of putting a dog park out there, that looking at
Yeah.
the cost of some of these things, that the animal shelter was, it's not currently,
Well, the dog park wasn't part of the plan.
no.
That would be something that just down the road, if they wanted to do it, it's an option. Whereas where it is now, it's not an option. But that 700,000 didn't include a dog park.
And what's making, I mean, is it just there's no dogs there? Is that why there's no barking? Because that problem could reemerge pretty quick.
My
Yeah,
understanding
6 dogs.
is that a lot of the barking, it seems, was caused by the dogs that were being brought in. That's as far as I wanna go with that,
Okay.
Just a different skill set running it now,
I guess.
yeah.
And,
There are definitely dogs there, and some of them have been there for well over a year, so.
Wasn't the, well, it sounds weird to say it out loud, but
Go ahead.
one of the options for that old landfill that other communities have used is a dog park.
you mean the landfill out here? I've never heard of that, but
I'm
We don't own
pretty
it,
sure
we
when
could-
we looked at that, for the solar issue,
I know solar is, but I don't know that,
I'm 99% sure one of the biggest issues was just a green park, butterfly park, they were calling it, and dog parks.
Are you talking the
Well, I will-
landfill next to
I'll-
the transfer station? or-
Yes.
Okay. The transfer station landfill.
okay. I was
No,
like, we
'cause
can't go there.
I know, I went there with you. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, perfect spot for,
You still have the
No.
problem of the access when the dump's not open.
Yep. Right, I'm just
I know, yeah.
spewing.
And, you know,
transfer station.
Yeah,
if we
sorry.
went to your
Well, you
position-
could actually move the
Transfer
gate
station.
more upwards.
You could.
You could move the gate and have
But
it
you
have
People
access.
in there with nobody.
Well, no, he said access to the dog park. People who wanna take, they were talking dog parks. Have
Oh,
access.
I mean, could we go smaller with the animal shelter if we said we're not gonna take on other towns?
Honestly, I feel like it's
Beneficial to,
not like it's huge extra. I think there's room for 9 dogs,
okay.
the way it is now. I don't think that's outrageous.
No, I don't think
Even if
that's
it's just our town. Not saying it's gonna be full very often, but,
Okay.
But then there's times like when Allison had 33 cats.
cats, yeah, well, the cat rooms, you could fit a lot of cages in. It's not the same as dogs.
But they were sharing the dog's building.
Yeah,
when
no,
I
they
was
have
up
separate
there.
cat rooms, and the way it's set up is there's a cat room, and then there's a, what do they call it? It's a separate cat room for quarantine. And same with the dogs, there's a separate section, 5 of the kennels are in one section and 4 in the other, so they can separate them if there's something going around, or dogs come in, they wanna make sure they're healthy before they let them be with the others, that kind of thing. So it's all set up that way. But,
I think this kind of falls under what Steve was saying about, this is something we talked about heavily for a while. We were on board with looking at it and doing that, and then it fades off a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, so I think every time it comes up, we're pretty heavily invested in discussing and figuring it out. So I say we move forward with it. We put it on the goal sheet and we put it as one of those things that,
And if it's
in
700,
2024.
we arrive at a design and we say, we've got to fundraise X to get,
Yep.
to make this work, you know, and
It
all
may
300.
just be that we get to the point that, you know, the council is willing to do X.
Yeah.
And we're willing to go up to this point. And back to your point a moment ago, if others are anticipating that they would like to see more, that might be the motivation when there's been a guideline set. We are willing to do X, Y, and Z. If you want additional to that, you're gonna have to put something together and propose that. And
yeah,
bring,
they
you know,
have a vested interest in it then.
That's right.
Because I don't feel like going to the taxpayers and saying,
That's right.
Right.
Give me
that's-
700,000 for animals.
That's where my dollar figure
Yeah.
sense comes from. It may not be right, like me in business, I would look at, I have X amount of dollars and I'm trying to accomplish this goal, well, I guess this is this is how it's gonna fit, game over.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm looking at this scenario. You know, right, wrong, indifferent, that's just how I view it. So if we were to put a price tag on what is a reasonable cost.
Well, and who bid out the 700,000? Or not bid out it, but how is that
It was the price per
figured?
square foot, just that's what
No, the
commercial.
price per square foot,
Gotta be.
I got 2 firms that said they would design, and they teamed up with a contractor that would build. And the first quote came in at 1.975 million. And the second quote came in at just over 1.2. So I went to some local contractors and said, what would it cost if, and I gave them floor plan, and I said, what would it cost for you to build this? And they talked to all their plumbers, their electricians, their site guys, and they put together numbers, and that's where they came back at around 640, but that doesn't include the septic system, and if we have to drill a well, and if something goes wrong, so that's where I came up with the 700. But if this isn't until a year and a half from now, stuff could go up too.
it's half of
so-
the lowest bid. So,
But yeah, it's expensive to build right now.
And would it be beneficial, or could it be beneficial for the animal shelter to separate from the town? Are there more monies available
Is
in
there a
options?
nonprofit, you mean, or their own
Yeah.
entity?
Yeah.
No. No, I don't believe that that's,
But there are grants out there that we can go after. Just gotta find the time,
Yeah.
so.
Restructure, back to that.
Well, we've tried, we went through USDA.
Yeah, that was one.
USDA does the infrastructure, and sort of the same issue we're having with CDBG is the median household income for the town of Bucksport is too high to qualify for any of those funding. So what I did ask was, we had these other 8 communities, and we technically qualified for 30%, but I wasn't satisfied with that number. So I said, we have these other 8 to 10 communities that use it, and they were higher than us. And we
Oh,
weren't,
God.
but Knobscot,
Wow.
annual income, median household income is higher than Bucksport, so now we don't qualify for anything.
Wow. That's surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have
we
thought.
have not
yeah.
qualified for more in the time I've been here than we've ever, because for a long time, they based our qualification on a standard that was established prior to the closure of the mill in terms of the value of the town and all that kind of stuff. And that's what they went on right up until 2 years ago. And so we missed all of the qualifications that got done for that kind of funding.
I do have a financial question. Have we set in motion, upping our threshold?
She just put it up there.
I put it on the,
I was gonna say it to Steve.
What are you doing behind my back? Okay.
I put on
You
down
sensed it.
dock,
All right.
the town dock replacement, which that is in been applied for in two separate places. One is in Congress and the other one is through the Holtrachem settlement money, and so that's on there. And then increase the funding limit required for referendum approval as well, because at $300,000 this year, if we need to buy an ambulance, we're not gonna be able to without a vote. That's it. And that needs to be done by August to get it on a November referendum.
Yep.
So,
If we did it, I mean, if we did it now, could we put it on the June referendum?
Don't have much
we
time on
only
those.
put those on the November,
Okay.
Just
Alright.
return.
Okay.
because the perception is if you take those big ticket items and put them in the June, that you're trying to avoid
The big turnout.
the larger turnout elections.
Right,
And this will be a large turnout election because it's a presidential year.
yeah.
This year?
Oh, it is.
Well, I will tell you
I
that
hadn't seen
when
that.
you approved the sewer, you did that in a June election. And I inherited the fact that you had done that in a June election because the sewer project and the sewer rates and all that stuff went through the roof. I started August. I will never forget what happened in that June election because I took it on the chin because the town did it when nobody was voting, and I know why you did it. You did it because it should have been done before, and you had the sewer plant that you were trying to build. So, but it was, I would be reluctant to put anything of like that, or like upping the limit of the referendum.
Right. But we have, currently, we have the VPIs going in June. That's the only thing we have on the ballot.
That's correct. And that's driven by the need to get the application in. If we wait till November, we won't make it.
Right.
And not to be a skunk at a picnic, but we still have some other things that
I like that.
That
I
was-
didn't use that.
Feeling that
Duncan.
one.
Yeah.
also working on that, before we make this list too much longer than staff can appropriate. The other thing that we haven't done is we haven't completed we still have a moratorium on solar regulation, and we need to finish that rulemaking on, that. We haven't done that yet. That's, needs to get done too.
Weren't we
Does
gonna
staff-
oh, go ahead.
I was just curious, does staff have an opportunity to sort of input on goals and objectives as well, or do they, no? Or through you, obviously, yeah.
Have you ever known Rich and I to not speak up?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's helpful. You guys are in the weeds every day, so there may be things we miss or something, you know.
There's quite a bit of those that are already, the tennis courts that are in the process of being engineered. The playground committee will meet this upcoming Monday. The waterfront's got 2 grants working on it, plus the committee's gonna be reactivated as well. Central Street project, that's all ironed out, we're just waiting for the weather. April, I think, is what we're looking at, so that'll be complete in April. The railroad property, Maurice O'Connell's who I'm working with CSX. I got contact information through Senator Collins' office, so we've had that. I can help you spend the ARPA funds. Maintenance of buildings, it's a lot that we've talked about, but it goes beyond buildings. It's the trails, it's the ballparks, it's the parking lots that you mentioned. Matter of fact, Jay and I had that conversation today on how that funding works. Do I need to request it for the waterfront parking lots? So, a lot of these, we have, a lot of them are in motion. The town dock replacement, like Sue said, 2 funding sources to cover the entire amount, are in the works, and it's just a waiting period to see what Congress does. I do know last year they were awarded in April, so, and May is when we should know from Mountain Clock, so time is what we're waiting for there. The big thing that I would say is, of the list you have, is prioritize. What is your priority? Because you guys hear it as much as we do here. Where is your number one priority? I will tell you, there's a lot of housing coming in,
Hmm.
right? We did that story yesterday with the news. There's a lot of housing coming in.
Is that supposed to like turnkey 2024, do you think, or 25?
The housing?
Yeah.
So Main Street project's gonna get started this spring at no fault to the property owner. That was a delay.
Right.
I'll take that one. Penquist, on funding, should start in the fall. Mike and Melissa Osborne subdivision, the road's in, the power lines are up. So, and then of course you've already got the two, Wilson Hall's almost completed, and next week, the 5-year note is done.
Hmm.
Hard to believe it's been 5 years. And then last one was the property Chris Pettman bought, the old Timberland building. That's been full, and matter of fact, I know he's only had one turnover in that entire building, and I call him often for people looking for places, so. I wouldn't believe everything you read on Facebook regarding the Penquist property, or the phone calls that Sue and I have to.
You could have
make
ended
about
that
it.
sentence at Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't believe anything you read on Facebook.
Yes,
Well,
please call the office. Well,
We've
could be the
also
right-
had things come to us from the RSU that have, and so every time they had the, you know, it's in my manager's report tonight, you know, the rumor that was out there that the buildings being constructed for Penco's are gonna be, rehab and recovery, housing, and that, you know, and that's not the truth. And then today's most recent was that Penquist had taken over Knoxview and raised everybody's rents, and that's not true. Nobody's out of pocket has raised in that. They raised some of the subsidized, the subsidy increased, but the cost to the
But the
to
tenant
the-
doesn't
the
pay
tenant
more.
did not pay more, and one of the biggest things that's driving dissatisfaction with what's happening in Knoxview is they've made it a smoke-free property.
Good.
And that should have happened a long time ago. If you've listened to our public safety people talk about what it's like to go there and try to either get somebody out or deal with a fire there, that reducing the risk of fire is huge, especially right now. But coming up, they're looking for a CDBG funding to assist with putting heat pumps in all those apartments so that the electric baseboard heat costs aren't so high for the things. But it's we had it from two sources, Rich and I did, about it was gonna be a drug rehab and recovery facility, and I called Jason Bird and he said, Susan, no, we would have had to apply for it, number one, and we would have to have a whole staffing and treatment and all of that kind of stuff, and that is not.
Didn't they use the language workforce housing during the presentations?
Yeah.
Yes.
Part of
Okay.
it was, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
I
right.
applied for the same grant to them for a different project in Orland, and it's definitely not anywhere close to a rehab.
Okay.
And I think they're required to have a sprinkler.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And special licensing.
yeah.
New
So-
state.
One thing to keep in mind is that right now, they've been approved for one 40-unit building and one 18-unit building. And they're talking about phase 2 and 3 being 2 or 3 more 40-unit buildings. So you could be looking at 178 new units. And the fire department has already expressed concern about the number of calls they'll be getting, just because you got that volume of people packed in that area, it's gonna increase. And they're already running 2 crews nonstop, so I know we just dealt with staffing issues, but we may
As
get
we
up there again.
look at the long-range goal of that would be, especially in the kind of housing, which is apartment buildings, you know, multiple units in each thing. The positive thing about the Penquist project is that it will be operated and managed by Penquist, which is, has rules and people on site to manage it, and
You know, we better run than we had.
I'm not casting any stones, but
Where else do, they have properties in Bangor, don't they, a lot?
They,
Yeah.
they've got lots of properties.
All over the place.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, their staff was doing work up at one of them, we saw them hauling off old refrigerators, old stoves, and they had 2 trucks and a van doing work up there yesterday on the townhouses. So they acquired the 7 townhouse buildings and the, apartment building plus the 12 acres. But what's also important, when Sue says about additional apartment buildings, the ladder fire truck is, I've gotta say, close to 40 to 50 years old, so I mean, when you're talking about maintenance of buildings and trails, we've also got, vehicular stuff that doesn't normally come up.
He's hoping you can tip it.
what's that?
Denning's hoping we can tip it.
Well, it was included in the TIF. That hasn't been realized because Whole Oceans
Right.
hasn't.
So,
No, and Luke's talking about the Panquist project.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I see.
We,
So-
but that, the TIF has to come from, both parties have to mutually agree. So, if they're working with Misha funding and TIF, and the laws around the TIF, with housing have softened in the state, so it's a possibility.
Worth looking at.
Absolutely, but I mean, it's gotta also be initiated by the development.
The rehab of Knoxview alone will improve the standard of living for the people who
Oh,
live
yes.
there.
And that number of units is gonna have an impact on Main Street, the
Yep.
businesses on Main Street.
And the tax
Sure.
base. Yep.
So I think a good goal would be to right size public safety for an influx
Well,
of
certainly when you're
units.
permitting additional beyond what we've done, we need to consider the impact of that for, I mean, the 55 and older impact isn't crime, it's ambulance.
Electricists and stuff,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's ambulance.
Yeah, I guess you can say that, but I disagree with you. But I think with any, with people are people. Okay, I mean, in the business I'm in, 55 and older gets in trouble too. And they get, and their stuff's can, you know,
Be
I've
the
dealt
biggest
with
handful.
the 3 years I was gone, I dealt with a lot of 55 and older. So, I think she's right on the money. Public safety, you're gonna have to. You get an influx of that many housing units, that, you know, the population's gonna grow. You have to. It's not only fire though, but police. I know I'm a
The-
pro, but
The positive thing is that
you
this
can't be
is,
going to one person at a time.
this is phased, and we're talking years ahead, so there's time to grow into it,
Yeah.
as you
Mhm.
Yeah.
go along. You just
Sure.
have to, it's a factor you need to think about, which is, if we, you know, takes X number of people to do Y things, then we have to, but if we don't have any place for people to live who work in the grocery store, or work at Ledbetter's, or are, then we can't employ small business, you know, people that, the minimum wage alone, you know, right or wrong, has impacted things, but even with that, people can't rent apartments with that at you know, full wages, so I think that I know everyone doesn't agree, but I'm very pleased that Penquist chose to invest in Bucksport with the kinds of, that we have heard and heard and heard that we need 55 and older, that we need apartments that people can downsize to from, I can give you a list of 25 people who should be in that situation as opposed to what they're in.
And they're a really
3
solid
years, I will be.
developer.
Hmm?
They're really solid.
Couple of years I will be, right?
Anyway, I think that is, because they've invested in other communities and I think it's been
good
successful, I
places
don't
for
know
people
why
to
it
live.
wouldn't be successful.
Period.
Yeah, and along the
Yeah.
coast,
Yeah.
the problems tend to be exacerbated, you know, the affordable housing is a bigger problem, so I feel like this gives us a chance to get a little bit ahead of it.
And because the median income is rising, that 60% of it is rising too. And so the people that can take advantage of this housing is a higher percentage than it might have been in the past.
So all of that housing is subsidized?
I don't think all of it is.
Not the first 18,
The first 18 isn't, okay.
correct.
Right.
The second set is workforce housing, which is like the next step up,
Sure,
so.
that's perfect.
Did you know that second phase, either way, what it is or isn't? Is
It's 40 building, it's already been approved by. the planning board.
Originally, when phase one was presented, it was gonna be 55 and older. Then when phase two happened, which wasn't supposed to happen so quick, but the funding came available, so they went for it. They decided that would be the 55 and older, and the 18 unit would be workforce housing. So that's
very
where they're
nice.
at right now. And then the future buildings are supposed to be some for family, 2 and 3 bedrooms and that kind of thing, so.
Which we
Very nice.
need.
We need,
Okay.
sure.
What's
Yeah.
their goal to have what's already there revamped?
I haven't heard a timetable. I know they're already working on it.
Sue and I met with one of their people the other day remotely, for CDBG funding for that purpose on what's already there. So, they've got work on their end, and we will bring you
That's awesome.
completed information on what they need to do. We'll make sure before they come here. We'll have a public hearing and all that good stuff, so you're not gonna get half information, you'll get what they'll have to apply for.
Okay.
That building needs, like I said, right now it's baseboard electric heat, it's very expensive, not terribly reliable. They're looking at heat pumps in all those units, which would be much more cost effective for
In the
tenant.
townhouses?
Hmm?
In the townhouses? Or
The townhouse so the townhouse is another option that they have to look at as well. So they're gonna put pen to paper and figure out the biggest need, and that's what the CDBG money will be used for at that point. They hadn't come down to exact pinpoint location on exactly how much and what, and that's what they're using this time for now. They'll be coming to us on, not March 8th?
14th
March 14th.
would be the public hearing
Yeah.
to talk about this. And CDBG is $500,000, which is a drop in the bucket for what it will cost them to rehab that facility. So that provides them with some grant portion in order so they can do this kind of work, which, as I said, is, needs a lot in terms of not just cosmetic, but other stuff.
We are coming up on time, folks. I don't want to shut anybody off, obviously. If anybody else had anything pressing, let's get to that. I don't know how we want to pursue this moving forward. There's been a couple of ideas floated that I want to make sure that we account for. The first is that, and I think Rich's is a good one, so I'll start with that. It was the most recent in terms of, I think we do need to rank choice fees a little bit. That probably could be I know that's not the most popular word in all circles. We should rank these and just say, and say which of these are our biggest priorities, and maybe in the interest of this remaining a living, breathing document for all of us, that could be something that we review either at our next meeting or the meeting after, probably the next meeting, unless anybody objects.
Could you
Just-
email it to us and we can email it back to you with
Even better.
all of
And
our
then we'll
priorities?
just put them together and see.
then put them together and that's where they fall?
Knock them out and get them done by April?
I also like the idea
April.
of, I think Rich gave it very quickly a couple of bulleted, going down through the list saying, actually, we're working on this is gonna have a completion date of X, blah, 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 blah. If we could pick some of those off too, that would help us in this prioritization.
So
Yeah,
if you get a
right.
list,
Could that be added to these?
that's what I was gonna say,
Right.
I'll
So
put
then-
on what the status
Sure.
of
Pick some that
anything
are-
with any of
alright,
these
this is
are,
already
so you
started, we can get
understand
that,
what work's been
right?
done, and then you can
Right.
Prioritize.
decide
Yep.
where they fall based on that with.
Perfect.
And then things that either need committees or action moving forward. I think probably the conversation needs to become, as we move forward, here's what we're looking at, here's the decision that we need to get to, and here's the time frame for that decision to be made. I've heard a lot this evening about things being kicked down the road. I've complained about it before myself, and I've been thinking about how can we perhaps get after that. And I think some of that isn't inherent on us to say, okay, we're gonna make a decision by this time frame. We're gonna be prepared to talk about what we're willing to do and willing not to do, and kind of go from there. Even from a committee standpoint, like if the waterfront committee, for example, not to pick on that, but if we're gonna start that back up, what's the scope of that discussion going to be? I mean, we all kind of know what the end goal is, but how are those goals gonna work, and what's our time frame here before we're gonna start making actual decisions? And I would just kind of like to encourage us to pursue things in that manner as we move forward, so that we can get away from that feeling I think that we have of kicking things down the road. But anyway, let's start with that first, unless there's any objection, and I'm not trying to take this over. Please, if there's another suggestion as to how to get after some of this, I'd love to
The
hear
other
it.
thing that I will do is I'll pull our last year's goals and objectives, and anything that we hadn't addressed last year that's not on this list, I'll put it on here,
Okay.
and you can decide whether you wanna leave it on there or say,
A lot of them are the same,
There's some-
because
There
we've
are.
been kicking it down.
Yep.
So is there
Well,
any way I can get a copy of that? Just so I can see
I
what?
can send it to all
Yeah,
of you.
that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, because I did in December, I think it was, I did the annual that
Yeah, it
said,
was a-
these were our goals and
Yes.
objectives, and this is what we've done thus far, and these are the ones we've done, these are the ones we haven't done,
Yes.
et cetera, et cetera.
Because we talked about it so much, we should probably throw the historical society on this list. I don't think it's on there.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think because that's one of those things that's gotten kicked down the road, and quite frankly, I think it's Councilor Eastman's that sometimes gets looked at as the person that's against it, when that's absolutely not the case. He just makes a very valid point that we need to consider whether that's perhaps the best use for that particular land.
We don't have a
And-
planner, you know, and
That's right.
there is some times that I think that would be beneficial
Yep.
around conversations
Yep.
that become emotional as opposed to practical.
Exactly. Yep.
Paul, did you wanna say something?
Yeah. The whole kicking down the can down the road, I think it was, Councilor Rankin brought up the waterfront and dock.
Mhm.
I was on the council 6-7 years ago.
That's right.
And we were talking about replacing the docks, expanding. I mean, we were gonna pretty much take up the whole bay. And that's our bread and butter,
Mhm.
right? That brings people. It brings people with this that spend it out in town. For me, that would be the top of my list. It was just
And I kind of often confuse, because I don't separate the waterfront walkway. It's kind of, to me, it's all one.
that is all
package
one
deal.
thing, right? It is. That's the bread and butter, and it goes from land, 80, 100 feet out, and I mean, it needs to be improved. Not
I
that,
think
not
it's
that
been
it's bad,
prioritized
No, and
by
there's
the
been,
climate.
it's great.
You look at the fishing pier, you look at the.
Yeah.
Like the fuel tank,
We did,
that's gotta be, we gotta pay attention to that, because that was a little too close for my comfort when the high tide.
where
Was
it's
that
at.
underwater?
Oh,
Yeah, no, but it was right there.
It was
Let's
close.
not wait for it to get there. Yeah.
oh, come on.
It's not gonna happen.
Where's my sense of imagine?
Right.
Well, I think what would help too is that like when we go through and put like here are the things that have been done. Like I know that there's been a lot of grant work. A
Yeah.
lot of things have gone into it. It's taken a lot of time and it's tied up in the state and things like that. So I think that will be helpful.
The
To know
The
what's
town
there,
dock
right?
project has taken years of grants for engineering
Yeah.
and permitting through the state and the feds, and it's not that nothing's been happening, but all that foundation building, really, it's not within our purview to move faster than permitting agencies outside of us move. So I think that your list, I'm happy to give you sort of where we are, and,
That'd be
Yeah.
great.
we've,
I'm just impatient.
I understand.
I want it all, and I want it right.
But not too long ago, I went through an iteration of what we've done since 2015, and
Yes.
It's
Big
extensive.
list.
it's
Yeah.
I would match it to any community twice our size in terms of actual accomplishments and putting something on the ground and all of that thing. I mean, the wall isn't on here, but the wall is this year.
Yeah.
Our last
And the
retaining
roads,
wall.
I mean, those are big projects.
And they are big projects, but they make a huge difference in the face of the community too, so if
And
you
I
don't
know it
mind,
feels
I'm
like
gonna add the wall.
It feels like we're
to this
kicking it
one.
down the road, but oftentimes it fits in spurts, because you have to do some stuff to get there and then wait.
Right.
Awesome.
People
big rest.
forget where we started.
That's a good point. It is a good point, yes.
No, I'm just impatient.
I know that.
All right, we've got 5 minutes before the start of the next meeting. I want to give everybody a chance to use the restroom. So unless there's any objection, Chair, let's adjourn this.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Great discussion.